Hello and welcome to Chai on Science and Society. It is my privilege to have my guest, Mike Simmons, who has been well known in amateur astronomy community in general. He has been an amateur astronomer and outreach leader for over 50 years. And I think the key thing is that he loves astronomy. He loves sharing astronomy with others, and that's what we will be talking about. But just to give you an idea, he started his outreach activities in the 70s with Los Angeles Astronomical Society and at Griffith Observatory, which I still haven't been, even though I also love movies. And so Griffith Observatory shows up in there, and somehow I just haven't been there. And so yes, one of the things to do. But just to mention, Mike's outreach activities have taken him to travel to all over the world. We're going to talk about that actually quite a bit today. But he also founded Astronomers Without Borders in 2006, and probably most people would have heard about that. It's a wonderful organization, which was, as it says, that's how astronomy should be. Of course, there was Doctors Without Borders and inspired by Astronomers Without Borders. He retired from it in 2020 and founded Astronomy for Equity, which we are going to talk about today, which is using astronomy to bring science opportunities to marginalized communities. He's also on the board of directors of Dark Sky International, and we have talked about Dark Sky on this channel as well. We interviewed Dr. James Lowenthal, who's also a big proponent of dark skies, and so we have done that. He's also a part of the outreach committee of the African Astronomical Society. And if this wasn't enough, a minor planet is named Minor Planet Simmons. 22294 was named in his honor for his outreach activities, and he has won numerous awards for popularizing astronomy. And if you want to know the background, he's a retired 36 years as biomedical researcher at the School of Medicine at the University of California, LA. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's sort of like I've seen your name everywhere. Of course I know about these organizations, and it's just like we didn't have a chance to actually personally talk, and I thought this was a great opportunity. But I would start with, I mean, we're going to talk about various things that you have done and your outreach stuff. But I know one thing I did not, it was in my introduction, but then I actually skipped it because I thought I'll start with that because you went to Iran in 1999 for an eclipse, and I think later on for transit as well. Considering all the tensions, especially with between the U.S. and the Iran, how did that come about, and how did you go there?
Well, I've been an eclipse chaser since 1979, my first one here in the U.S. And then I said, well, this is amazing. So I try to get to as many as I can, which is not nearly as many as many people I know. And there was one coming up in 1999 that was going across Europe. Everybody was going to Europe. I was planning on going to Turkey. And I had been on another eclipse expedition, which actually combined another thing that I liked, mountaineering. And so there was an eclipse in Bolivia in the Andes going across a 6,500 meter peak that we were going to climb and watch it from there. And somebody from that company contacted me and said, oh, there's an eclipse going across Iran. You want to lead the astronomy part of it? And I said, I'm an American Jew. Is that a good idea? He said, yeah, so am I. It's fine. And I ended up going, and it was mind-blowingly different than I expected. The people, when they would learn that I was American, they'd say, oh, we love American. They do. There's like fake Disney stuff, and I was admiring somebody's fake polo shirt with the insignia. Everything American, and they just absolutely love it, and they love Americans. And so it was just completely different in every way, as far as the women and all the different things. They would say, "Oh, we love Americans. We just don't like your government." And I'd say, "Yeah, I don't either, whichever one it was. I've been there many times since then, and I don't like their government, and neither do they, but people to people, and it's just absolutely fine." So, and that was really eye-opening for me. First time being to some place that I really didn't understand, and other people didn't understand. When I came back, I wrote magazine articles, gave presentations about astronomy in Iran. It was all about the people and telling people what the reality is, and it's astronomy that brings us together that way, because there is no separation there. It's all the same.
And where in Iran did you go, by the way?
Well, I've been there 7 times now, so,
Okay.
and so I've been all over the country. I was helping the amateur community. They're all young people who were unable to get telescopes and things like that. And so I got kind of well known, so people would invite me to different places, and I love to travel around. Tehran, of course, Isfahan is maybe my favorite because I like warm, dry places, and it reminds me of Tucson, and Shiraz in the south several times. And there's so many different things. In fact, there's one of the artifacts back here behind me was a gift, and it's a Ahura Mazda copy of one of the things at Persepolis or someplace, I forget where, that I've been to. But it's different everywhere. It's like one of those typical places, like many in Pakistan might be similar. I know India is that. Wherever you go, there are different, very different cultures, languages, people, and it's an amalgam of all of them.
And by any chance, did you see the movie, which I really liked actually, Sapide, which was about the amateur astronomer in Iran?
Oh yeah,
It was like
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, actually, I know the filmmaker, and
okay.
I've seen that, and I've had a little talk with Sapide as well, and so yeah, I know about that. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's
The teacher in that. I've been to that
now I see.
several times, actually.
And that was another movie where I mean I think again looking at it from outside, I mean I'm originally from Pakistan, so of course there is more affinity, and also you know a little bit about it. There are a lot of commonalities that we can see. But that movie is also like, I mean, the kind of issues, the kind of, I mean, when you're thinking about astronomy or the things, they're the same. It's like, wherever you are, it's the same type of thinking. And sometimes, as you mentioned, sort of like, now that I've been in the US for several decades, sometimes the way people talk about Pakistan as a completely alien place, that's what gives you a perspective. Wait a minute. But actually, it's not the way people are looking at it. But if you have never been, or if you have never encountered, then it becomes a strange place or
Right.
different. Yeah.
And in Iran, like every place else, you go out into small villages. Some of them are very conservative, and that's where you find, I wouldn't say fundamentalist ideas, but more conservative ideas, more religious and things like that. And in the city, it's very urban, and it's you wouldn't know unless you look at the buildings and the clothes and the skin of the people that you're in a different place. And I when I started traveling to very different cultures and places, I would go, "Oh, that's amazing that we have something in common." Now, if I find something that's truly not the same, that's astonishing to me because it's very rare.
Yeah. So can I piggyback on that and ask you about Astronomers Without Borders? Because that came out after, I mean, like, a few years later. So why, and sort of like, what was the motivation for that? I can imagine the broad one, but just in general, how did you get to it?
Well, it was based on my experiences in Iran, as well as a couple of trips to Iraq, one just before the U.S. invasion in Baghdad, and another afterwards with amateur astronomers in Kurdistan in the north, Iraq, which is another example of cultures stuck together by Western powers that don't belong because their language is more like Persian, Farsi, and completely different cultures in the South. And the contacts I had with other countries and amateur astronomers that I was doing more of, and I realized that what I was doing with Iran and Iraq and getting help for them and everything else was uh, something that could apply to every place. And I tend to take simple ideas and then spread them around the entire world. But it's just make them bigger, and because why not? You're putting the effort in. So that was really the reason for it. And I had been to Iran also during very tense times when the U.S. Was doing a lot of saber rattling, especially after Iraq. Some people wanted us to invade Iran and Syria as well. And so it was kind of to educate the people. If we have the biggest bombs, we need to know about the people before we drop them on. And there are real impacts of what we do. And Americans are the ones who are really kind of isolated from the rest of the world, sitting on this big island over here.
So and then it sort of like caught the idea, and Astronomers Without Borders, of course, is now I don't know how many countries, but I think in sort of like 50, 60, 70. I mean, I think more than that. I mean, I think several thousand members, and it's actually really, it has taken off.
Yeah, it really did. And I was in contact. I also ran the largest cornerstone project to the International Year of Astronomy in 2009, 100 Hours of Astronomy. With that, we had most of the world's countries, well over 100 involved in that. And so that really grew the organization. And it's, I have to say, it's not the same now. I kind of tell people it's that things aren't happening there the same as they were before. So it's ebbed, but that's okay because the need to make the connections as we did it's not the same as in the early days of the internet and things like this. So it's okay that can subside. It doesn't matter so much. The programs are not the same, but what I'm doing now is focusing on the things I'd learned through all of these decades of doing astronomy around the world and what we can do and how we can use astronomy to improve the lives. So that's why I'm focusing on those particular things.
And that is your nonprofit, Astronomy for Equity.
That's right.
And so if you can say a little bit more, I mean, so generally, and again, as an astronomer who also do outreach stuff, one of the questions that people ask, well, if you are underprivileged or if you don't have resources, why astronomy, right? I mean, so that's the general framing that comes in, and I'm assuming that you get this quite a bit, and especially if you have an organization which is called Astronomy for Equity. What is the justification? How do you frame it? How do you see this?
Yeah. Well, one thing is I've reframed who are helping. I don't call them underserved anymore because we have so much of that. And there are underserved communities in the United States, for example, in the inner cities and so on. And programs for them is great. But most of the world, such as you in Pakistan, for example, especially if you go outside the big cities and go into the villages, they don't have any access to any kind of programs. So they aren't underserved. I call them unserved. They simply do not have anything that's going on there. Certainly in places that don't have internet or often not any electricity. But everybody is interested in astronomy. So there is no science education, for example, in many of these places because the teachers aren't trained in it. There are no science labs of any kind. There's no biology lab or chemistry lab or anything like that. And the people born there are just the same. They have just the same interests. There's one laboratory they have that ironically is better than ours. Mars when we're near the cities, and that is the astronomy lab. Because if you don't have electricity anywhere around you, it's dark. You can see the stars. And I know organizations around the world that I've been working with for many years who are using astronomy in these places to introduce science, or STEM in general: science, technology, engineering, math, um, and art, which people put in there, and make STEAM as well, and other things. So it's not only just inspiring, it shows us our place in the universe, and then that helps to show us our place in the world, and that we're connected to more. All of these things, that was part of what I did with AWB, was showing people in places that they could connect to the rest of us. So there are so many ways in which astronomy can be used for introducing science, for inspiring kids, for showing those who have a spark that needs to be helped along to show a path to things. And like I say, I know all of these countries you talked about that I've worked in, and many that I've visited. I know organizations there, and they are doing the work, but they're up by themselves. So it's the same idea as what I did before, bringing everybody together and supporting those organizations. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to get the wheels out of all the Western developed countries and get them over to the people that need them. And so that's what I'm doing now.
So, I mean, when you are thinking about sort of like, okay, well, this is how in those darker locations introduce astronomy, and through astronomy inspire them towards science and scientific thinking, or scientific fields, STEM or STEAM. How are you doing that? Meaning to say, I mean, as you mentioned, I think it's fair to say that oftentimes teachers lack resources, or places lack teachers as well. I mean, like the same teacher is teaching 10 different subjects and things like that. So how are you, in Astronomy for Equity, how are you bringing this sort of like, inspiration for astronomy to them? What means, like lessons or telescopes, or how does it happen?
Well, the telescopes is one thing that I was doing in Astronomers Without Borders. It's not aware that it's happening there, but I'm continuing that. I've sent crowdfunded for money for telescopes to Libya, for example, where a great national organization there has set up astronomy clubs in middle schools in 5 different countries, 5 different cities across the country, and they support them. And that's just one thing they need. The whole idea behind this is that they have a great program. They have great people. They have interested kids. They have support from the Ministry of Education. They couldn't get telescopes. So we got them telescopes, one missing piece. And now they can do that. And they use the telescopes to inspire others that aren't part of the astronomy club, go out into the public. So it just cascades. So that's something that we do. I also sent some and took some to astronomy students in Ukraine who requested them because of their dark skies when the power goes out. And I've done this around the world in the past too, so we'll do more of that. One of the bigger programs that I've ever done, though, and this is really, I think, the best that I've done, it is that after the solar eclipse we had here in the United States last year, there were a lot of leftover brand new eclipse glasses. And so I had those donated to us. We have over 1 million, and I have more companies they're willing to donate them once we clear out our storage space. So those are free. Now we have the resource of all these groups around the world doing education, and getting them to do it, that's free because we're just helping them do what they're doing, whether they've got funding or not. We don't pay them. So that we have the makings of a multi-million-dollar project here that costs nothing. And I've handed out eclipse glasses before, and done some programs even with used eclipse glasses, which after the last eclipse, which we've learned is not really safe. So I have all these brand new ones, and we're making lessons, science lessons, to use with those. So it can go on for years. You don't just look. I mean, it's fantastic. People love to see the sun for the first time because who looks at the sun,
Right.
And but there's something more. I don't like to do things where it's just one and done. Let's build on it. We're going to send the 2 million glasses around the world. Let's do something more than just have them take a look and throw them away. So we have lessons that are developed about what is the sun? What are you looking at? What's it made of? Gas? What's a gas? What's hydrogen? Where do we see that here? And the ultimate goal is, how is the sun connected to what's happening here on Earth? Well, it's connected to everything, So we can go into physics, chemistry, biology, anything we want. Astronomy is connected to all these things. So it's a whole science program, starting with a pair of eclipse glasses. And I figure with this one, we should be able, we need funding for it. We've sent over 100,000 out to 12 different countries, including Pakistan.
Yeah.
And we got a lot more to go. And I figure we'll probably reach 3 million students, and it'll cost us 10 or 20 cents per student each year. It's hard to beat that. That's return on investment.
And I also think with the sun, the good thing is because we do interact with schools as well, as it's during the daytime. You can actually do these, students are right over there. You can actually do that. You don't have to worry about sort of special events or something like that. And
Right.
and it's bright. I mean, you can actually just see it. So I think in that sense, yeah.
It's easy. And the plan includes getting little not spectroscopes, but diffraction gradients, transition gradients. Very inexpensive. I know the manufacturer. And we just get a million of those and send those around. And then you can do things that they've never done before.
That's right.
See, well, this is what rainbows come from. This is why you see this when you see oil on water. There's interference. It goes into just anything you want.
Yeah, and that actually gets really, once you start talking about sort of like these colors that are divided, and there are some diffraction gratings where you can actually see sort of like lines as well, spectral lines. And once you have that, I mean, you have the foundations of physics, you have foundations of astronomy, you have foundations of stars and everything. And so then people actually really, it's just a different level. And again, from a very simple instrument, basically.
In fact, I have a program that was supported by Lockheed for I think it was for SOHO at the Stanford Solar Lab. I have their design, and I've had it manufactured for a small spectroscope that uses these gratings. You can see lots of lines. You can look at the solar spectrum. You can then look at fluorescent bulbs, and all the different things that you can do with this. And now you have a whole physics lab with just light and a little thing. So, but it's got to be part of a more comprehensive program. And distribution is the problem. People aren't used to sending things to Nigeria or something. I work with people in these countries, so I have an opportunity, tremendous opportunity, a blessing to be able to do things like this and know we can get it done.
That's great. So towards the end, let me flip the topic from the brightness to darkness. And that is initially literal, and then we'll talk about metaphorical as well, but literal in the sense that dark skies. I mean, you are in LA and you live near LA, and we mentioned about Griffith Observatory in the beginning, but obviously, that for films, Hollywood films, it's great. Sort of you see the light down below, but in some sense, for astronomy, that is, we are losing it. The night sky, and a lot of people, it gets inspired by looking at the night sky. I grew up in Karachi, and I actually have almost fondness for the few stars that I used to see. So when I go to a dark side, which I've had the privilege of going sort of to Chile and to Arizona, and I did my graduate work in New Mexico. But I still, when I go back to Karachi and I look up and there are like three stars, and I go, like, oh yeah, I remember then growing up, I would see three or four stars, but we are even losing those. And so, how do you, I mean, right now there are dark spots even in countries that are what we would call developed world, developing world, and things like that. How serious do you think is the threat? And when you are doing your outreach, how does that play in, or does it play in terms of lesson plans and other things? But how do you take the issue of dark skies to people, to the public?
Yeah, this is a difficult thing, as you point out, and the situation is kind of dire in a lot of ways. The artificial light at night affects us in lots of ways. There are diseases associated with bad sleep, all kinds of things, as well as all the ecological problems that people know about. But losing the dark sky itself, we're kind of at the point of almost losing the battle because the people growing up now have never seen it. They've never seen the Milky Way. I grew up in an area that is now highly urbanized, north of the northern part of Los Angeles, and it was really dark. And this was a long time ago, of course. Um, and where I live now in the San Monica Mountains, outside of Los Angeles, I was able to see the Milky Way uh, on any clear summer night when we moved here 30 years ago, and I can't do that, just barely a glimmer now. So how do you explain something to people that have never seen it? How do you explain what a forest is for people who've never been out of the city? You just and so what's what's bad about this is astronomy is a part of our culture. It's a part of every culture. It's a part of every culture back through time, and I've seen things from ancient civilizations when I've traveled having to do with it. We have five-star reviews and all these different things. You don't realize that it's a part of everything that we do. But more importantly, it's part of our environment. It's like you can go to a park and see trees and everything else, but half of our environment is above us, and it was always a part of what our grandparents and great grandparents. It's the it's an inspiration. It's important for mental health. It's just so many things. So how do we deal with that? Well, we can show people pictures, and they don't think they're real now, unfortunately, quite often. We have to get people out into darker skies and appreciate things. Even getting people to look up. When we shifted from the 70s and John Dobson came along and said, let's not put the telescopes out in the dark sky. Let's put them on the skies of San Francisco and show people things. They look up to the sky at night for the first time. And this is one of the thrills of doing outreach is there's Saturn and its rings, and they'll look up and they'll look through the telescope. That's it. It's it. It's always been there. The moon, show people the moon, and they look back up at it. And you don't see anything the same anymore. That's the start. That's, to me, with my background, that's the way we start. And we tell people about it and tell them, look, when you go someplace else, if you're driving across the country, stop someplace dark. If you're going camping, don't go into your tent at night. So it's a tough sell, but there is a lot of work going on by Dark Sky International and the chapters and the people around the world, and I've had discussions about this in every country, to try and bring this back to us and make it a part of our culture again.
Any progress. And by the way, you are absolutely correct. And in Pakistan as well, where there isn't much professional astronomy, but amateur astronomers are thriving, and that's what they are doing. Sort of like bringing telescopes in different places, different cities, and of course you go to dark sites too, but also just bringing them. And I remember showing people Saturn to the telescope, and people they would look from the other side of the telescope. It's like, do you have something in front? Like, no, 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 it is coming. I mean, you are looking at over there. So yes, I mean, I think Saturn is just such an amazing thing. Uh, One last thing, and again, so this is something about what we are going to lose, right? I mean, and that's what you mentioned. Sort of like astronomy has been part of human culture, human societies from the beginning, and makes sense. You just, especially when there were no lights, you just look up and it's inescapable, the awe and the wonder. I mean, so there is this whole other element that how what you feel looking up. It's sort of like, apart from protecting it, but you actually feel small and be part of the cosmos. There are efforts trying to declare dark sky as World Heritage, right? And if something like that happens, I mean, it will depend upon. So, I mean, as I mentioned, I did my graduate work in New Mexico, and New Mexico is one of the dark states. So, there are regulations in terms of like light bulbs. Okay, well, they have to be covered, for example, and so on and so forth. Do you think something like dark sky as a World Heritage, do you think something like that may pass? And would it have any impact? Would it have any teeth? Or are we really, will be losing it? And there may be pockets that are special that people can travel 1,000 miles and enjoy the dark sky and then come back? Or do you think we, maybe as society, we may be able to turn it around?
I think things are beginning to turn around because I see so much about this everywhere. And when International Dark Sky Association was started by some astronomers at Kitt Peak, which is now Dark Sky International, it was about astronomy. And now there are so many other aspects of it. Environmental issues with climate change are really coming into the fore. And this is a part of it. And there are simple arguments for this too. It's like, look, if the astronauts can see your lights from space, you're spending money and burning fossil fuels to send light into space. Why would you want to do that? It's just simple economics. We don't want to waste things like that. But there's a lot more awareness, and it's part of something larger with the ecological, environmental issues. So I think the younger generation is sort of getting the idea, and I'm seeing a lot more of it from younger people. So I think those who are dealing with this more are actually going to turn the tide. I think it should be considered to be important everywhere. I'm reminded by a song from the '60s by Joni Mitchell, who said, part of it, cut down the trees and put them in a tree museum and charge the people $1.50 just to see them. That $1.50 tells you how long ago that was. And that's what we've got now. Having these special places is good, but there shouldn't be islands either. But here's the one thing that can give us hope. You can't put those trees back in the forest. It's hard to get rid of all the things that are happening now, various kinds of pollution. Some of it is forever. But light pollution, you can turn that off with a flip of a switch. There are very simple things to do, and it's gone or reduced. So those islands have a chance to grow too. And so I think it is the one environmental issue that we really can turn around.
Well, this is a hopeful note to end on. And thank you so much. We are going to provide a link both in the description and here as well of Astronomy for Equity, a nonprofit doing wonderful work, and it impacts the entire world, rest of the world. And I think so. It's a real pleasure and an honor to talk with you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Salman. It's been a delight, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.